am a father to 3 young daughters. And like millions of South Africans, I don't want them to grow up in a country run by a party like MK that wants to abolish the Constitution, which wants to subvert the judiciary, and that plans to expropriate private property and nationalize the Reserve Bank. These are the things contained in the manifestos of the EFF and MK. And they amount to an all...
So John Steenhuisen is raising the alarm, sounding the alarm really loudly, that the MK party wants to abolish the Constitution. And I think that's really interesting because in this video, we're going to study a little bit about the manifesto of the MK party. But let's listen to what John Steenhuisen has to say about the plans of the MK party with his full force with which it has come back into the politics of South Africa. And I'll be back for the analysis on the MK party's manifesto.
Like you, I'm a South African first. The people who make up the DA are South Africans first. And we have learned from the past 30 years the devastating consequences when party interests are put before the national interest. So, if you are anxious or scared about what South Africa will look like following these unprecedented election results, I want to reassure you. I too am a father to 3 young daughters. And like millions of South Africans, I don't want them to grow up in a country run by a party like MK that wants to abolish the Constitution, which wants to subvert the judiciary, and that plans to expropriate private property and nationalize the Reserve Bank. These are the things contained in the manifestos of the EFF and MK. And they amount to an all-out assault on the Constitution of our country. They will cause untold unemployment, misery, hardship and hunger for millions of our people. And allowing this to just happen will set South Africa's flag and Constitution on fire, just as the DA warned during the course of the election. This will signal the end of the South African dream that we all shared in 1994, and for which many, many people paid the ultimate sacrifice to see come to reality. I want to assure you that the DA will not give up on our Constitution or for a country that belongs to all who live in it, united in our diversity. Our Constitution now faces its greatest test since 1994. And the moment now calls for all patriotic South Africans to step up and defend our Constitution. The DA will answer the call of South Africa. And we urge all others who love our Constitution and all it represents to set aside petty politics and narrow sectarian interests and join hands now to act in the interests of the country that we all love. Our country needs us now, and we cannot let her down. Thank you very much.
Yeah, so what do you guys think? I think it's really interesting that John Steenhuisen actually in this video, he has actually, this was an address to South Africa coming from the DA in his analysis of what has been going on in the election, and he speaks about how his fear for the MK party, an MK dominated party in South Africa, or an MK governed South Africa, would be detrimental to the life of many people in South Africa, because he feels that the MK party wants to abolish the Constitution, and that will cause a lot of rampage and all that in South Africa. But in this video, I thought that we could analyze some parts of the MK party's manifesto really quickly and understand Jacob Zuma's vision for South Africa a little bit. I'll go deeper in other videos, but we can come back here. So the MK party has a 24-page manifesto, really easy to find online, available to read, but we'll just go quickly through some of its pillars and its preamble. So the MK party argues that the people of South Africa recognize that the 1994 breakthrough that seemed to be a strategic victory for the people of South Africa has turned into a strategic defeat, and that South African society is adrift from its core values and is struggling with moral decay. It is also compounding the issues of these problems with a liberal constitution that constrains the political influence of the majority, that's the black majority. So in practice, the true wielders of power are unelected institutions and those with money. So this is according to the MK party now. And the MK party says that South Africa's prolonged struggle of national shame since 1652 is a result of the inadequate scientific, industrial, financial, and military capacities of South Africa. MK Party also argues that the foundational issues of poverty and unemployment and inequality stem from the theft of land and mineral resources. So this is what MK Party envisions for South Africa as the problems of South Africa. It also speaks about how the post-apartheid reconstruction efforts cannot be pursued through neoliberal policies that prioritize the market over state intervention. So the MK party also has this socialist perspective in a way that the state should keep most of the power, and rather than a neoliberal perspective which the DA party, has especially. Now, the MK party also believes that neoliberal policies under the failed ANC government have worsened unemployment, poverty, and inequality akin to apartheid era conditions. Okay, so the fault of the ANC at the moment actually has been by the MK party actually has been attributed to the neoliberalism practiced by the ANC. While a lot of people like Jacob Zuma speak about how the ANC has actually operated as a proxy of Moscow and has been striving for the perfection of socialism. So it's really complicated how to really read, this dichotomy between the MK party's reading of the ANC's failure and also the likes of former President Jacob Zuma, who actually interprets the ANC's failures as a pursuit of a socialist form, perfection of socialism as practiced by Russia. So it's really, really interesting. But anyway, some of the commitments of the MK party actually says that it wants to recenter South Africa on African cultural and moral values, accommodative of various spiritual beliefs and persuasions. It also wants to move the country away from constitutional supremacy towards unfettered parliamentary supremacy. Okay. It also wants to expropriate all land without compensation and transfer the ownership of land to the people under the state and traditional leadership custodianship. It also wants to nationalize South Africa Reserve Bank, SARP, and also major banks and also insurance companies to reduce the dominance of private finance over the economy of South Africa. Now, this is the MK party's ideas. It also wants to nationalize strategic mines, ArcelorMittal and Sasol, and revitalizing South Africa's state-owned enterprises to fulfill the developmental roles and spur economic growth. MK Party also wants to ensure free, mandatory, high-quality education from early childhood to postgraduate level to boost human capital and research capability. MK Party wants to provide permanent jobs for all capable and willing workers at a basic salary of 4,500 rands with training and skill opportunities. And also, finally, MK Party wants to ensure that every young person reaching the age of 18 serves 1 year in the military service to cultivate discipline and patriotism among the youth of South Africa. So for this video, I'll quickly only go into just one pillar, its first pillar. So the MK party has, I think there are 8 pillars. The first one is reclaiming our dignity. The second one says reclaiming our land and mineral. The third one speaks about reclaiming people's power. The fourth one speaks about building human capital, But anyway, I thought that in this video we would go quickly to reclaiming people's power, which I think has been one of the strengths of Jacob Zuma and why he really has been dominant in this election despite its short stint in the politics of South Africa. So according to the MK, this is pillar 3. In other videos, I will go through its other pillars, but I thought that for this video, this would be really interesting to understand the ideas behind MK Party's populism and its pursuit of people's power, okay? So the MK Party speaks about the fact that the Constitution of South Africa, the South African state is colonial, founded on the Roman Dutch law with very little influence of African jurisprudence, okay? And that African traditional leadership while the jury recognized, is de facto treated as an auxiliary with no role in the development of law and policies or participation in state administration. Now, MK Party believes that efforts are underway to transition South Africa from a unitary state to a federal structure, and that efforts are also underway for some provinces to secede from the rest of South Africa. MK Party also, under its pillar for reclaiming people's power, it recognizes that post-apartheid reconstruction cannot be facilitated by a liberal constitution that constrains the political power of a majority. It also argues that post-apartheid reconstruction cannot be facilitated by a liberal constitution that has the most extensive legal protections of the former oppressor. The MK Party also believes that property relations cannot be transformed by a liberal constitution that privileges the property rights of land thieves over the property rights of the dispossessed masses. Okay. And then finally, it believes and recognizes the fact that the only unconstrained power by the liberal constitution is the power of money. Now, as a result of this, due to the liberal constitution South Africa has adopted, the MK Party's interpretation of that is that the strategic breakthrough of 1994 has become a strategic defeat for the black majority, and that the South African state politically protects the interests of white monopoly capitalists. This is one of the languages we hear a lot from the EFF. White monopoly capital. This is now in the MK Party's manifesto. Okay. It also speaks about the fact that the mass of the African working people is powerless over the state, and their aspirations do not find expression in key state policies. And that since 1994, poverty, unemployment, and inequality have not been remedied through incremental government programs acceptable to their true rulers. Now, to reclaim these problems, the MK Party, with a decisive 2/3 majority, actually, this is in its manifesto. It actually speaks about in the manifesto already that it has a 2/3 majority. It states that and builds from that power. And probably this is really interesting because that almost kind of like played out in the election vote with its 15% of the votes being established already. So the MK Party wants to hold a referendum to scrap the 1996 constitution, as John Steenhuisen states here, and replace it with a parliamentary system with or without a codified constitution. This is the goal. So it wants to really get rid of the 1996 constitution and then replace it with a parliamentary system. Okay. The MK Party also wants to establish a lower house of parliament comprised of elected representatives and an upper house comprised of indigenous kings and queens, as well as other traditional leaders. So in other words, it might turn South Africa away, into this kind of like, it's kind of like introducing more indigeneity into politics in South Africa. And probably this is really interesting. And coming from the power of the Zulu nationality, we might see more Zulu nationalism being represented at the parliamentary space if the 1996 constitution of South Africa is abolished by the MK as it speaks. The MK wants to also reduce the number of provinces from the current 9 provinces now to 4 and redemarcate the provincial borders. Okay. It also wants to introduce a new administrative arm of local government, the traditional government sphere, to discharge the development responsibilities in areas under their authority. And finally, in trying to reclaim people's power in South Africa, the MK Party wants to restructure the legal profession to ensure that it is unified, diversified, and transformed to be representative of black and female practitioners. Okay, so this is just one pillar of the MK Party, and I think this speaks to one of the reasons why Jacob Zuma has been appealing to a lot of the people on ground, especially since the majority have been more of the Zulu people. It's very populist. It has these ideas that stem from populism and also indigenous African culture. The MK wants to try to merge indigenous African culture with governance, and turning South Africa away from the parliamentary system it has been adopting all the while, and infuse more indigeneity into that as a way to redress the historical injustices that South Africa has suffered from the apartheid time up till present. So I think that's one interesting perspective through which we could understand the fierce atom bomb, as Neil de Beer speaks about Jacob Zuma, and how he really came back with the force, because it speaks about how a portion of South Africans really yearn for this need, for this desire to introduce more indigeneity into parliament, more of the voice of the indigenous South Africans to power, and it seems that they've been excluded for a long time, and Jacob Zuma sort of like embodied that voice, that depressed, excluded voice, and then really shot forth fast, and really powerfully in the elections. But I don't know, what do you guys think? In the next videos I'll be analyzing some other parts of the MK party's manifesto, so we got a clear perspective of where the MK party wants to take South Africa to. But what do you guys think about this? It's been a lot of information in this video. Share your thoughts in the comments.